I am so glad you're here, Christina. Thank
I'm
you.
so glad to be here. Thank you.
And I love that in your bio you state what you believe in. It's a it's just like it's a lovely way to claim that in anywhere anyone asks for your bio. It's so brilliant.
Thanks.
Um, so we met at AWP, I think,
We did. We sure did.
through the all connecting Mahogany L. Brown, the
Yes.
magical, the magic all connecting poet genius. And I've been so fortunate to like exist in this sort of same world as you in these ways and read your work and get to read with you sometimes and be in this collective that we've been sort of the Right on Time collective, which has been like this lovely thread of extraordinary thread of just beautiful, brilliant stars. Um, but I am super excited about your new book and wanted to ask you some questions about it, starting with um, how like fucking awesome the title is. Like it's just like I think we're always I don't know. I was raised in a family where we were like, you know, we're immigrants and we're here in America and we're supposed to be like, just try to get in line here, would you? Just, you know, and so that's like this huge thing to say no. Talk about it.
Okay. Okay.
And I didn't prepare her at all for anything. By everyone.
So everybody who's listening or watching. The title took a lot of back and forth, and it was the one title that felt right after moving through many iterations of that book. And it felt right for the book because the book is really about the ways in which in my specific movement through this country, and I was born here. I have an immigrant parent and I was born here. The ways in which we are taught that survival is predicated on our governability. And yet somehow we don't survive anyway. And so it felt like a word to describe the various movements that I take on in that book. So I talk a little bit, the poems are about a lot of different things, about being little in the Bronx and community gardening, and about the passage of a friend of mine who I knew, who was rooted in Harlem. And so there's sort of a different New York City geography. And then traveling in Nepal with another close friend a few years ago and sort of mourning the loss of my friend there. And yet I carry my Americanness with me everywhere. And that word has felt like a nice, like an antidote in a way. It feels like an antidote maybe to the ways I have taught myself how to conduct myself here. And in relation to others, you know, female and queer and brown and all, you know, all the things.
All the things.
All the
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
You know, so we call the collective of brilliant facilitators that come through here the United Against Silence Collective, of which you are now a part. And I think about, right, governability also requires that like we stay silent about the ways that we're suffering, right? Like systems of oppression require silence. And I know that a lot of us are sort of like really trained into not speaking out these things, and it's sort of this breaking through of the skin that comes with your like your first decision to do that, and the fear that comes with like, you know, your first piece that's published that somebody might read on the internet or you know, like that thing. What's your experience with silence and overcoming silence, or anything you have to say about
What
silence?
a beautiful name for a collective. I I don't know how to answer this quickly. Okay, I think what I'm doing right now, why I'm hesitating, is that when I'm tracing through my coming into being as a poet and how silences were different for me before I started speaking, and now that I've been talking for a while, I have to remain, and I do find myself trying to remain vigilant about moving my language into areas that that are silent or silenced,
Mhm.
to refer to Oprah for a second,
Mhm.
but are silent or silenced inside of me. At first, I think, my poems, the silence that my poems were really pushing through were silences that surrounded my queerness and my queer identity. Because I didn't really have places to look growing up for what I could be, or it was okay to be what I am. And they also took the shape of pushing through silences around family abuse. And now, more and more, I think the silences that I'm working through are silences around, I guess, closeness between myself and others. That feels like a place where I'm learning, I think, still how to be a human being in relation to other human beings, and in a way that is loving and whole. And I do find myself reaching more and more towards an audience. Like in earlier work, it didn't matter if I was legible to other people, because it was enough that I was speaking. It was terrifying enough to speak. I couldn't imagine the reader in a
Right.
way. And now I want to communicate more and more. I find myself wanting to communicate with other people. And so pushing through silences that could be there just because we don't see each other or have language for each other yet. I feel like a little bit that's sort of what I'm working with now.
Yeah. As you were talking about this, about like learning how to be a person among people, which is like, right, like it's not, I mean, learning how to love in a way that is not self-destructive
Yeah.
is like, it's I just feel like there should be that class instead of algebra 2.
Mm.
Um,
Or maybe in addition, I'm also a college
oh,
counselor. I just
you're
want the babies to have algebra too.
you're pro algebra 2. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll workshop this.
Okay.
Um, but thinking about that,
Right.
and as you were speaking, I was just thinking about how I've learned new uses for silence, for non-violent silence,
Mm.
as a writer, as a person living through a global pandemic,
Mm.
right? Like
Mm.
there's been so much more space, which I'm really tempted to like fill with Instagram, for
Mm.
example,
Mm.
or or like the noise of Twitter, or gosh, there's all these podcasts, or like there's all of these ways. Um, but I feel like I need this nonviolent silence in order to be able to listen.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not sure like what what are the ways that you come to the page, that you give yourself that, like, do you have any rituals
Mm.
that like allow you to listen?
Can you talk to me about nonviolent silence?
I guess what I mean by that, and I just threw it here, um,
I like it.
is that we have these silences that are enforced and are, like you were
Uh-huh.
talking about, right?
Mm.
Those
Uh-huh.
those silences, and then there are these silences which are like a choice to just be quiet.
Mhm.
Um, I remember when my kids were little, it doesn't happen anymore. I guess I don't know why, but I used to every year lose my voice for like 4 days around the winter time.
Wow.
And like I said, it did. The last time it happened was actually right before the 2016 election.
Mm.
But I
Mm.
just like cannot speak. And
Mm.
what came what comes from that after I get over the frustration and the voice, like I'm pushing through it and it's gone, is this sort of like, oh, I don't have to speak. Like
Mm,
I can just like do.
mm,
And like this sort of noise exchange of social media can sometimes feel like really like fluttery and flapping. And as a writer, like sort of interfering.
mhm,
So I guess by nonviolent silence, I mean that sort of like peaceful. I don't
mm,
choose it. It's just like, or not, I do choose it. I don't.
mhm. Yeah. I think that, well, I live alone and I was pretty sick through some of this
Right.
pandemic, this pandemonium. Um, and that gave me a lot of space, and I'm working from home. So it gave me, I typically work in a high school and I'm typically there so much of my day. And I'm surrounded by children and also by adults. And there's a constant, it's constant. And then I have a life outside of work, and that's poetry is a very engaged community. And I don't know. And so it's been a year of space, but not necessarily of silence. And the practice that I had to adopt, the practice that I flirted with, that I had been taught in therapy and had flirted with prior to the pandemic, was one of like feeling my feelings. But I
Mhm.
only flirted with it. I only did it when it was convenient and I had to, or it was overwhelming, or I felt like, let me give this a try. But I found the necessity of that really made itself clear during the pandemic, because I felt so much fear, and the fear wouldn't move. It would stay, it would get larger. Um, it was immobile, it felt, and so not feeling it amplified it. And so I think my practice of quiet is a practice of feeling what I'm feeling in a given moment. And
Mm.
whether or not I communicate it, it's whatever, but feeling it um, so that it doesn't, they don't rule me more than they have to, or, and that clears the way for work, good work, creative work to happen too. It's productive in that way. I've been overwhelmed by social media this year. I just stopped doing Instagram like a few months ago, and I didn't do it on purpose. There was no public service announcement. I just seemed to stop doing it. And then I posted a picture of my grandmother's dog like recently, and I was like, oh, this is the first time in months that I posted, and I'm posting a dog. And then that was it. There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, there is a lot going on there. And it messes with your feelings in a
Mhm.
weird way. But then in some ways, right? Like half the time I live alone. Um,
Mm.
and it can be like my only sort of happening upon somebody that I'm not like calling for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and that happening upon is like, I don't know, it's like a big part of being a human in the world. And
Mhm.
um but I definitely like was finding myself on social media before I was even awake.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
like, oh boy, I don't like even hear my first thought before I like let Twitter flood, you
Yes,
know?
yes, yes,
Um,
yes. I understand that. Yeah. Twitter's more terrifying to me than Instagram. I
Twitter,
think I'm an Instagram girl. If I'm gonna go there, that's where I go.
yeah,
That's
I
that's
love it.
the life I live.
It's very kind. Twitter is really like, it moves very fast.
So fast.
And I'm such a slow thinker. Like it takes me like 3 days to figure out what I think about a thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable.
So no.
Same. I think I would have never articulated it, I think, but it's probably exactly what it is. It's the speed of Twitter makes me like, oh my God.
Yeah. And also, I feel like the people on Twitter don't get my jokes
Oh
as,
no.
as well as they should.
Oh no. Nothing sadder.
It's sadder than saying a joke and like nobody or like only like my niece.
One like.
Like, yeah, one like family member.
Yeah. I mean, bless the niece.
No, but yeah, bless her. Bless her.
The nieces.
Yeah, but Twitter breaks my heart.
Mm.
But what I would just love to hear about your rituals. Any rituals.
Any rituals.
Like you're you know, you came through. You had COVID very early on, right?
Sure did. I had it so early there were no tests for me.
Right, before anybody like we watched.
I think a lot of people had it before me. I just think it was even more early before they were, anybody was like, here's an illness,
Right.
Yeah.
We watched your film. So we do a workshop with healthcare workers. And
the film.
Your film, Diagnosis, on this week on Tuesday.
Oh wow. Okay.
Wrote about like, what did we know then? Because there has been such, I remember we were like wiping down envelopes and
nobody knew, but not wearing masks.
and like
astonishing. Yeah. This is all my noise. Yeah.
So then you come through and like it becomes like, oh, this is the thing that's happening.
Right.
What have been your, I felt when it was sort of coming up, I felt suddenly so grateful for my body, so aware of my mortality, right? This year, it's an unusual experience.
Right.
Do you have any rituals that you like? I just like to ask witchy questions, but do you have,
yeah, I like a witchy question.
Yeah, tell me about like the rituals that you like.
Okay, yeah, I have them. I'm like, do I have rituals? And then I think about how I've lived my life in this very ritualistic fashion all year to like stave death away. And it's like, yes, I absolutely do. I have a lot of plants in my house and I talk to them. That's a thing.
That's a great one.
I lay next to them and I just talk to them. I also learned a few months ago that it's good to wipe their leaves. And I have this massive, I thought about doing this workshop out there, but my neighbors are noisy downstairs, so I'm not doing that. But she's really big and I wipe her leaves down and it feels like a thing that I can do for her that she can't do for herself, which is a tender thing. I like for my house to be really clean when I sit down to write. I love writing very, very early in the morning. The daylight, whatever shift we just did, is nice because we get light later, but it's also nice because I can wake up in the dark again without having to get up too early, which is like a secret part of my favorite part of the day. The dark moving into the light. Yeah, I like being up before and with the sun. I feel like there's a magic at that time. And there's also a silence. My neighborhood is a little noisy and there's a silence, like truly, truly. Even the babies are asleep. I think those are the biggest. I mean, there are the birds. I live in an apartment that from this one, there's a window here and I can watch the sunrise and then all of my other windows are south facing. So I watch it go because I live like across from a parking lot and a McDonald's. And so it's like all low. And so I watch the light because I've been working from home. So I watch the light all day. But there's a group of mourning doves that come when it's cold and sunny and windy. And they all come to the fire escape and they just sit there. And sometimes they come and they put their little butts up against the window. And I just have felt, I think between the plants and the bird, and there's other birds that come, there's starlings and other birds I've learned the name of, thanks to my friend Toby, who I'll send him pictures and he tells me what they are. I have felt like an animal among animals and plants this year in a way that has been really nice as I've tried to listen not just to my feelings, but also to what my body is doing or not doing and trying to be mindful and take care of it. I have felt as ephemeral, but also as necessary as the things around me. And that has felt really nice, even though I can't talk to the birds and I can't talk to my plants. Well, I do talk to the birds and the plants, but they can't communicate back to me in a way that I understand. I have felt part of in a way that I haven't experienced that since I was younger, or like at a summer camp or something. Yeah, that's what I'll say about my rituals.
That's so beautiful.
Good.
I love it. And yeah, like as we come to a whole year of this, right? Like we've really seen every season.
Right.
Um, yeah, the sort of learning the names of things
Mm.
is such a it's like something you can hold, right? Like, oh, there's
Yeah.
a sparrow, there's a cardinal. Um, and well, everyone knows a cardinal, but
That's
I
true. I don't know. I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
But yeah, I just like have found myself, and this is like again back to that idea that the
Mm.
nonviolent silence, the spacious silence of like and not having to commute, not having to like rush out the door to be
Mm.
able to just be like, no, I'm here. And what you said about being an animal among animals, among plants and animals is really